Hello everyone, Bob Believers around the world. Now I know I said recently that I was going to be taking a break from Edomite Esau related content, but this lesson was too good to pass up. In today's lesson, we're going to be discussing how genetics prove that the Caucasian is of Japhetic origin and not Hamitic or Shemitic origin. Now we know that the One West camps like to teach that Esau is the so-called white man, and in some rare instances, some of them like to teach that the white man is of Canaanite origin. But we're going to be looking in this lesson how genetics completely debunk both of those false doctrines. For instance, we know that Jacob and Esau were both Hebrews from the line of Shem, and Jacob and Esau's descendants both married Hamite women. So Jacob and Esau would have features that were a mixture of Shemitic and Hamitic features. But as we're going to see in this particular lesson, the so-called white man has no Hamitic and no Shemitic features, and is genetically distanced from both of these groups. So let's get into it. Now that we know that the Sumerians are descendants of Japheth, it's time to take a look at the haplogroup of the Sumerians. The majority of the Sumerians carried the R1a haplogroup, which in modern times is one of the most common haplogroups found in Caucasians today. Another thing to keep in mind is the fact that the Caucasian is the most genetically distanced from the Negro, with Ham being a lot closer to the Negro than the Caucasians are, which lines up with Scripture, because we know, as we've covered in the Japheth series thus far, Japheth isolated himself in the wilderness of Europe for a long time, and there was not much intermarrying with the sons and daughters of Shem or the sons and daughters of Ham, unlike Ham and Shem, who were neighbors for thousands of years. And this also, like we covered in the intro, puts a big hole in One West Camp doctrine, because if the white man was a Canaanite, or if he was a Shemite, he would be genetically close to the Hamites and the Shemites. But as you can see, the Caucasian is genetically distanced from both of those groups. Another thing to cover, Africans and Shemites do not come from the R1a haplogroup. The R1a haplogroup is one of the Indo-European haplogroups of Caucasians. It is a Caucasian lineage. Moving on from DNA bloodlines to now just getting down to the simple stuff, which is the genetic features that we can see on the outside, we're going to be looking at the daughters of Shem, Ham, and Japheth instead of the sons now. And when you look at the images of these three women, you realize how you see similarities between the Shemite and the Hamite, but the Japhethite on the far right lacks any linking features. The Shemite on the left has a wide, flat nose, just like the Hamite in the middle has a wide, flat nose. The Shemite has bigger lips. The Hamite has bigger lips. But the Japhethite has a very thin, narrow nose and very small lips. We also see that Hamites and Shemites have hair like wool, fluffy hair, while Japhethites have straighter, more horse-like hair. And we're going to be covering that in this lesson, where the creations of the Most High Yah often mimic some of his other creations. I have a great analogy that I like to use when it comes to the Most High Yah's great creations. When you watch a movie that is directed by a certain director, and then you watch another movie that's created by that same director, you will start to see patterns in his different lines of work. Even though one movie was a race car movie and another one was a World War II film, you will see references and similarities in his movies because they are made by the same person. Let's take a look. Now, this is something else that I want to cover. This is something that I've covered recently in the Japheth series, and we will get into this more in coming episodes. The Caucasian is genetically closer to the Indian than the Negro. Caucasians and Indians, most of them share a common ancestor because most of the Indians come from the same DNA haplogroup as many white people, as we'll put that up once again. While the Shemites and the Hamites do not share common ancestors with the Caucasians. Therefore, the Esau's the white man doctrine and the white man is Canaanite doctrine makes zero sense because the Canaanites are Hamites. So if white people were Canaanites, we would be seeing identical links between white people and other Africans, but we don't see any. We don't see any on the inside and we don't see any on the outside. Same goes for the Shemites.